Hello, and welcome to another video of me doing stupid stuff on the internet in hopes for people to watch it and like it. For this video, I'll be ranking all of the US presidents on a tier list from S to F. All of the presidents, that includes the newer ones like Trump and Biden, and we'll see how they stand up. I've actually done this before, but this is the first time I've televised it, and I will be providing an explanation of why I've ranked every president the way I've ranked it. And we'll see which presidents are truly good and which presidents are truly bad. Now, fair warning, I am not the ultimate opinion on US presidents. If you think that my word is law, you are wrong. This is a glorified opinion. But also, keep in mind that I might have some interesting things to say, so who knows, maybe you'll learn a thing or two about the US presidents today. We'll go in chronological order too, if that makes helpful. It also just makes things easier. Alright, first president, George Washington. Now, George Washington is interesting because the most important thing that he did when he wasn't president, that is the American Revolution. And when he was president, he didn't really do a lot. His cabinet was mostly divided between Democratic Republicans and Federalists that just constantly quarreled, and he had no real major accomplishments. So as an individual in US history, this guy is extremely important, but as a president, he didn't have a lot of accomplishments. However, I am still putting him in S tier because he, as the first president, defined the presidency, and he made it the way it is. And what I mean by this is he established a lot of the precedents, such as don't be called a king, like be humble, the 2-year term limit. He made a lot of things that were important for US presidents to follow because of his immense prestige. So he gets S tier. Alright, John Adams, the second US president. Pretty decent man, decent president, had a few quirky views on mobility, being a Federalist, but I mean, he knew what he was doing. I would put him in A tier as a president, but the Alien and Sedition Acts really dropped him down because it was, first of all, it's completely unconstitutional, and second of all, it's not very popular. Like, you need immigration as a country, and banning that is just kind of illogical. Not to mention the fact that restricting freedom of speech is not a good idea in the United States of America. So yeah, no, you're not getting an A tier. Sorry, John Adams. Alright, Thomas Jefferson. Where do I put this guy? I mean, his policies were very short-sighted as a Democrat or Republican, but he went through with the Louisiana Purchase, which ironically was against Democratic-Republican beliefs. Honestly, because of how important the Louisiana Purchase is, I'm going to put him in S tier. I mean, he was a decent president, but a few of his other political opinions were Embargo Act kind of was a massive blunder, but we'll go past it. James Madison. I mean, he would have been better as a Federalist, honestly. He didn't really do a whole lot. He just kind of was there and promoted more Democratic-Republican uselessness, so B tier. I'll be putting a lot of presidents in B and C tier, as you'll find out, especially these ones. Alright, James Monroe. Well, he's pretty much exactly like Madison, except for the fact that he did the Monroe Doctrine, which is, like, kind of important, but not really. I mean, yay, Monroe Doctrine. We can, like, protect Latin America, not like we ever actually did that. So, I mean, B tier. Okay, Quincy Adams. I'm actually doing a controversial thing and going against most historians here. I'm ranking Quincy above his father. The reason why I'm doing that is because even though he only had one term, and even though his election was a little bit controversial, given the fact that he won neither the electoral vote or the popular vote, he actually was a good president, and he curtailed this man, which I'll talk about later, from being president for an additional 4 years. And he enabled some important Whig policies, such as building improvements, good tariffs to build up the industry. We love the Whig policies. Yay! Good job, Quincy Adams. So for that, you get an A tier, and also, all right. So the next one, Andrew Jackson. I hate this guy. I mean, a lot of liberals hate him for what he did to the Native Americans. And I'll just say, yeah, that pretty much holds out. Even if you don't really care about Native Americans, this guy also sucked because he got rid of the federal banks. And he also did patronage. And you want to know why getting rid of the federal banks is a bad idea? It's because then when you get into a depression, you can't regulate the banks. So you're just stuck. You can just kind of say, you know what to do, and throw your hands in the air while the country just kind of explodes. And that's exactly what happened with Martin Van Buren. This guy got screwed over by Andrew Jackson, and being a Democrat, he was like, "Oh, we'll just let the economy fix itself." Oh, and it didn't work. So he was a useless president. He didn't really do anything. All right, Wilson Henry Harrison. I forgot about this, but we're gonna have to make a. We're gonna have to make a. We're gonna have to make a unrankable list for the few presidents that were unable to be ranked because this guy was in office for like. Actually, never mind. You can't see that. I'll switch to color. This guy was in office for like 53 days before he just suddenly died, which sucks because he would have been a good president being a Whig, but we never got to see him actually doing anything, which is kind of sad. All right, John Tyler. I mean, he was okay. He wasn't amazing. The one good thing that he did, and probably his most important accomplishment, was ushering in the pretense that a vice president will inherit the presidency once the president died, which is something extremely important at the time, because otherwise it's just kind of a 1 week show. And the importance of a strong leader at a time when the president dies is important. So for that, he gets C tier. But what keeps him from being higher is the fact that he was a Whig, but also not a Whig, which meant that he didn't really follow the Whig policies that were so good, which were tariffs, national bank, and expansion of infrastructure. So yeah, you don't get B tier. Sorry, John Tyler. All right. James Polk. So Polk is actually a really good president, despite being a Democrat and all of the nonsense that comes with that. Oh, I like states' rights. Oh, whatever. Shut the fuck up. But this guy did a few important things, including territorial expansion. Most notably Mexican-American War, and also making the Treaty over Oregon, meaning he added a huge amount of territory to the U.S. Extremely beneficial thing for him. Sad that he died like 4 years after going to office. He was only in his like mid-50s. R.I.P. Bozo. So yeah, you're going to the top of E tier. Congratulations. What? Okay. I might put you in A later. I'm not sure though. All right, Zachary Taylor. You died, right? I think you died. Yeah, you're going in the unrankable tier. Millard Fillmore. Where do I begin with this guy? I mean, first of all, he's just kind of forgettable. He was a Whig, so that's okay, I guess. You're just getting a pass for being a Whig. You get C tier. Congratulations. Behind John Tyler, the arguably better president. Franklin Pierce. Oh boy. You know, New Hampshire's only president. He's Franklin Pierce. He had one job as a president of the 1850s. Curtail the regional divisions behind slavery, and he absolutely failed. Yeah, good job. Good job, Franklin Pierce. Nobody liked the compromise of 1850. I mean, it was a good compromise, but like, use your brain. Anything else? D tier. James Buchanan. Actually, considering Jackson is in F tier, I'm moving Pierce also to F tier. James Buchanan. Oh, I hate this guy. He's so bad. First of all, he allowed the Kansas-Nebraska Act to pass, which just completely antagonized the North by allowing Kansas and Nebraska to be slave territories. And also, he did absolutely nothing to prevent secession. After Lincoln was elected, the slave states were just like, screw this, we're out of here. And Buchanan's just like, well, I don't know what to do, I'm just gonna sit here and do jack shit. So yeah, for that, he gets F tier. And then he spends the next 6 years of his life after being president just trying to cover up his legacy. Like, what are you doing, Buchanan? No. Alright, Abraham Lincoln. Instant S tier. Yeah, if you don't know why, that's because this guy did a lot of accomplishments, including ending slavery, winning the Civil War, and I don't know, a few other things. And let's be honest, if Lincoln wasn't shot, Reconstruction would have gone better. Because this fucking character wasn't in charge, it would have not been in charge of it. Oh, I hate Andrew Johnson. He's just so bad. Lincoln, you could have picked any other person to be your vice president, except for this guy. I mean, what are you thinking? You don't just give the slaveholders back their land. You're screwing over the black population. Your idea of Reconstruction was just like, all right, do you guys agree to be back in the Union? Yeah, okay, without actually checking to see if they were, and then be like, oh, here's your land back, here's all of your resources, now go back to doing what you were before, which need I might do with slavery. I mean, it's not actually slavery, but it's still sharecropping and tenant farming. You had a shot, but you just completely ruined it. And you almost got impeached. The only reason why you didn't is because you bribed a senator. Good job, buddy. Alright, Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was such a sad president because he had great intentions being a Republican and being a Reconstructionist. He wanted to build back the South to be better and more racist-y, I guess. But you can't deny that he was dragged down a lot by corruption. And it wasn't even him. It was just his administration, and he was completely oblivious to it. I'm honestly going to put some of that on the fact that Grant was never a politician. He was a military general that ended up becoming a politician out of pure, like, okay, I guess I'll see what my skills are for running the country. I mean, he didn't do a bad job. Reconstruction did fine under him. Granted, it was Congress doing most of the work. But corruption definitely keeps him from being any higher than he is. Rutherford B. Hayes. Some people like this president. Okay, let me explain to you why Rutherford B. Hayes is such a bad president. So first of all, the first thing he did when going into office was the Compromise of 1876, which, if you don't know a lot about American history, was basically a deal where he said to the Democrats, he was a Republican, I will end Reconstruction in the South in exchange for you not questioning the results of the 1876 election, which were very close, and there was a commission that could have granted the presidency to Hayes' Democratic opponent. So, first of all, ending Reconstruction was a terrible idea. The southern states were not yet ready to come back into the fold because they had gone back to their conservative governments and kept oppressing black people and stifling economic growth. So this guy basically took Reconstruction and said, screw it, I'd rather be president. I mean, aside from that, he also used the military to stop the Pullman strike, I think. Might not have... Yes, it was. Yeah, he used the military to stop the Pullman strike. Like, that's just kind of uncool. Like, don't do that. If you want to talk to some strikers, you talk to them. You don't shove the military up and say, haha, go back to work working 3 cents an hour for 12 hours. Yeah, Rutherford B. Hayes, you go into the dustbin of American history. James A. Garfield. Honestly, I don't know much about this guy, so C tier. You tried. He was a Republican. I mean, he probably did some okay things. He also got assassinated, and in death, he probably contributed more to stuff happening than in life, since his death was actually the catalyst for ending patronage and establishing a system of meritocracy in the United States. So, by dying, you actually probably did more good for the country than if you just weren't assassinated. So, interesting, to say the least. Chester A. Arthur, another one of those forgettable presidents from the Gilded Age that didn't really do a whole lot. So yeah, you get C tier. Plus, I don't know much about you. I mean, you probably weren't horrible, but you probably could have been better. Grover Cleveland. Oh. I feel like I wish there were 2 images of Grover Cleveland so I could rank his first and second terms. Because if it was his first term, he would have been an A tier president. And if it was a second term, he would have been a D tier president. Reason being is because A tier, he was considered a friend of labor. He wanted to help the working class. He was honest. He was just a good man and a good candidate. He had a lot of energy. and he got some stuff done. And then after losing the presidency and coming back into it in 1892, he suddenly became a conservative and he put down the Pullman strike. Oh yeah, forgot. This was a different strike. Pullman strike was actually Grover Cleveland. But yeah, he put down the Pullman strike, and he did a bunch of other bad things. So bottom of B tier. I want to put you higher, Grover Cleveland. You're the only president in the Gilded Age that amounted to anything. Wait, you're the highest ranked president of the Gilded Age, and you're here. Oh my god. Oh, Gilded Age presidents suck so much. In fact, I'm just gonna top it off with Benjamin Harrison going in C tier because these three men are basically the same. Garfield, Arthur, Harrison, they all did nothing. They were just kind of there. They were their presidents. They got the You Tried Gilded Age tier award. In fact, I'm actually just gonna add that. Add a row below. All right, I'll put all of you into here. What do we have next? William McKinley. Finally, the presidents start coming out of their little Gilded Age shell and actually start doing things. So William McKinley was really important because he became president in 1896, and this is where the presidency becomes really important because the U.S. is coming out of its little isolationist shell, and as its industries are improving, and as its economics is booming, it starts looking outside of itself for both economic and military opportunities, such as colonization and also external markets. And through that, he was actually a pretty decent president. So I think you get bottom of A tier. And most importantly, you nominated Teddy Roosevelt as your vice president because you ended up dying, which was good for the country. Because this guy, Teddy Roosevelt, I'll put you as best president of the United States. Because why not? Teddy Roosevelt, you had so much conservation, preserving land, so much so that you used more executive orders than like 3/4 of the presidents that came behind you combined. All for conserving land. Not to mention trust busting, getting rid of those monopolies that were stifling U.S. trade and U.S. development and hurting the working class and the middle class. Not to mention imperialism, which is sketchy morally, but really good for the U.S. and provides a lot of international prestige. This guy was the guy that made the U.S. look like a world power in the early 1900s. And that's why he's so important. It's a shame that he didn't win the 1912 election because, well, let's face it, he would have been awesome. Like a third-term President Roosevelt, I'm all for it. All right, William Howard Taft. Now, William Howard Taft is kind of like a mini version of Roosevelt, except he was more conservative, so B tier. He didn't have nearly as much energy or accomplishments or enthusiasm towards Roosevelt's progressive policies that were desperately needed in that time, so he gets B tier. But he was by no means a bad president. So, yeah, I think B tier is good for you. Woodrow Wilson. So this guy was president 1912, 1920, and he was actually a really good president. I know people give him shit for Birth of a Nation, which obviously was a terrible idea to show it, but, the guy had a lot of accomplishments. He adapted a lot of Teddy Roosevelt's progressive policies and continued his program, not to mention his political influence abroad at the end of World War I. He wanted what was best for the world. He wanted all the countries to be free. He wanted to represent ethnicities. He just wanted self-determination for every country. And although it was imperfectly completed due to the French, he tried his best, and he had a world vision, and in some ways he sort of accomplished it. So yeah, you get A tier as one of the much better presidents of U.S. history. Warren G. Harding. Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. Warren G. Harding. So 1920s were an interesting time in American history. It was a time similar to the Gilded Age, where there was a lot of government deregulation, and there was presidents that didn't really do much. But unlike the Gilded Age, it was kind of just a general time of prosperity for everyone, and not just the wealthy. So I'll cut the next three presidents, or two presidents really, some slack. Warren G. Harding, most people would put him in an instant F tier due to his corruption, except it's not really his fault that he was a corrupt president, because he wasn't actually the one doing the corruption. It was just people around him, and he was just kind of oblivious to it. I mean, that still docks you some points, but he's by no means a D tier or an F tier president, so I'm just going to put you in C tier for keeping the economy alive, being well liked. If you would have been B tier if it weren't for the corruption. Calvin Coolidge. Pretty much Warren G. Harding, but without the corruption, so B tier. I mean, he could have been better if he was more progressive, but he was good for the time, and he did his thing. Yeah, B tier. If you're in B tier, you're a good president. I mean, you could have been better, but you were solid. You were good for the time. Like that. Good job, Calvin Coolidge. You earned it. Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover is just... He would have been in B tier if the Depression didn't happen. And I know the Depression wasn't his fault, but because he had the same mind as Harding and Coolidge, and just refused to use the government to help people when the Depression hit in 1929, he's not a good president. I feel like I don't have to explain this. If you know anything about the Great Depression, he kept saying, "Oh, the companies will fix everything. The laissez-faire economics will make everything better." Granted, he wasn't a complete failure. He did try some of the New Deal programs that were done later and better and more significantly under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but he just didn't have the public opinion. He didn't have the energy for it, so he just one of the failures of American history, but not as bad as any of these presidents. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I mean, I'm so glad that you decided to go for your third and fourth terms. I just wish you didn't get sick and die at age 60, because you would have been such a great president to continue existing. So let me tell you why Franklin Delano Roosevelt's so good. So, New Deal, pretty obvious. The whole thing was shifting from laissez-faire economics to Keynesian economics, which basically means the government can spend in order to create public works programs and jobs in order to save the economy. It's a much more hands-on approach, and it proves to work. I mean, the US didn't fully get out of the Depression until World War II, when they could suddenly produce and sell military equipment to their allies. But this guy saved the US from its depression. It took a while, but he did it. And through that, he also kept the public tied to what he was doing through radio broadcasts to the public. And he was a great speaker, too. And once he was in the war, I mean, a wartime president, he did a good job. He did a good job. So, congratulations, FDR. I'm going to put you ahead of Teddy Roosevelt. Roosevelt's are number 1 and 2 on my presidential tier list. All right, Harry Truman. Truman is an A-tier president. Why? Well, let's just say he made the hard choice, but he made the right choice. And what I mean by this is ending World War II. Most of people think that Hiroshima and Nagasaki was not a great idea by the United States and needlessly provided carnage. It was actually needed, because without it, many more Americans would have died in a land invasion, plus many more Japanese as well. So I'll give it here. And then, aside from that, he just continued Roosevelt's policies for the New Deal economically. That's generally good president. A tier. I mean, he didn't have anything spectacular that stands him out in S tier, but good president. Actually, thinking about it, Jefferson seems more like an A tier president, so I'm going to move him down. Sorry, Jefferson. Okay, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Solid president. A tier. A lot of the presidents right after the Second World War were actually really decently good, including this guy. And I feel like I don't really have to explain. He was just a solid, good president, was a war general, and then became a president. Good job. Like, I'm sure that there's people that can probably explain him better, but I mean, you can only do so much, right? All right, John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy. Honestly, I put him in low A minus. I have a friend who really likes politics. He would put him lower down because of the Bay of Pigs invasion that failed, which was the U.S. military invasion into Cuba to try to depose of Fidel Castro. It was done under the supervision of John F. Kennedy. However, it wasn't such a catastrophic failure. More importantly, John F. Kennedy did some cool social plans, and he also found the U.S. through the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, if you think about it, is one of the defining moments of U.S. history, because if that had gone differently, if there had been a worse president, the U.S. would have been screwed. The whole world would have been screwed. A nuclear holocaust probably would have happened if the Cuban Missile Crisis went bad. So, just for that, you get a pat on the head. Good job, Kennedy. Good job, Kennedy. All right, Lyndon B. Johnson. In many ways, was kind of a second Kennedy. I mean, overall, it was worth it. Good president. President did some cool social programs. Shame he died so young. I mean, it was kind of his fault, but... Richard Nixon. D tier. Actually, what am I thinking? This guy's F tier. I mean, he escalated Vietnam. He put in place a lot of the social programs that were imperative of the conservative right. And what I mean by that is stuff like the war on drugs and the rampant imprisonation of criminals. And the reason why this is bad is because those policies unfairly targeted poor people, and especially black people, that were more likely to be charged for those crimes, even if it wasn't necessarily their fault. I mean, they still did the crimes, but listen, if you want a better explanation on that, just read Just Mercy. It's a book that'll probably explain why those policies were so bad. But not to mention that there's also the obvious Watergate scandal that set him down quite a bit. So yeah, F tier for you. You didn't have many accomplishments, and I'm glad that you decided to leave office. Gerald Ford. I mean, C tier president, he definitely wasn't bad. I mean, he probably would have been B tier if he didn't pardon Nixon, because that sets a dangerous precedent that if you do something wrong and you're president, you can just allow your vice president to pardon you and just be completely free of everything. Like, I get that it was for national reunification and not antagonizing people any further, but it just sets a dangerous precedent that you probably shouldn't do. I mean, aside from that, Ford was a fine president. All right. James Carter. Well, first of all, how are you not dead? You're 99, you've been in hospice care for almost a year. The one joke I constantly have about Jimmy Carter is that I say every few weeks, day 300 of Jimmy Carter not being dead, because it's true. Like, this guy is, well, he's the oldest living president, but like he was president 50 years ago. He's still around. That's just crazy in my opinion. Regardless, this guy didn't really have a lot of accomplishments. He ended up experiencing a depression, an economic depression, later in his term, and he was really unable to fix it, which was part of the reason why Ronald Reagan rose up to power. So, yeah, I think C tier. I mean, maybe D tier? Yeah. Well, he had a really cool after presidency, so I'll give him that. I'll give him that. He did a lot of charity stuff, a lot of social stuff. Like, for that, you'll get C tier. Good job, Jimmy Carter. There was better people to be your job, but you did okay. Ronald Reagan. All right. Well, his economic policies were terrible. because they fostered the beginning of what I like to call the second Gilded Age, which is where taxes on the rich dropped significantly and the income gap widened extremely, which is why you have extremely wealthy people and also insanely poor people in the United States right now, which isn't a good thing socially for a lot of reasons that are explained better on other YouTube videos and other YouTube channels. But basically, this guy was the reasoning for all that. I mean, he wasn't a complete failure, though, because he made some important policy decisions in terms of the Cold War. He was the president that put the nail in the coffin for the Soviet Union and ended the Cold War, which is important because, well, it lessens the threat of nuclear war, and it just allows the US to focus on other things than developing large amounts of weapons. And also, he was a great speaker, and he was a good person. Even if his policies were debatable in terms of quality, like, he definitely wasn't a bad president. I mean, I would have rathered him not exist, but I don't know whether to put him in bottom of C tier or top of B tier. I think I'll cut him some slack and put him in the top of B tier, considering Coolidge and Cleveland are also there. So, yeah, congratulations. You get bottom of B tier. George Herbert Walker Bush is a bad president. He was basically Reagan, but with none of the charisma, and also he had an economic depression, so yeah, bad president. He basically all of Reagan's flaws with none of Reagan's benefits. The only notable thing that happened was the Soviet Union dissolved, but by then it was inevitable anyway, because Gorbachev was doing his thing and all of that. Alright, Bill Clinton. 5 more presidents left. Hey, we're almost there. Alright, Bill Clinton, definitely A tier. So, one of his most important things that he did, and I cannot stress how important this is, balancing the budget. He's the only president in, like, since World War II, I would say, since World War II, that we had budget surpluses instead of budget deficits. And that's why so many people liked him. That's why he kept getting reelected, even if he was impeached and even with all of his scandals and whatnot. So, yeah, for solid economic policy and decent social policy, you get A tier. I mean, sorry. If he maybe had a little bit better social policy, such as allowing gay people to say they're gay and serve in the military, like he wasn't a big fan of that. And also, maybe without the scandals, I would have put him in S tier, but aside from that, solid president. In fact, I'm actually going to put you above Truman and right next to McKinley's end of A tier. But yeah, one of the better presidents that we've had in the United States. So that's pretty cool. All right, the other Bush, not a complete failure. But he didn't really. His only accomplishment was being the national leader that was required at the time of 9/11, and like his role in that cannot be understated. He was the figure that unified the country throughout there. Like, that's important. However, the things that he did after Iraq War, and then obviously the recession of 2008, I mean, he wasn't really able to fix it because it happened later in his term, but still, it wasn't. This guy just had too many problems in order for me to rank him any higher than D tier. In a way, he's kind of like Van Buren, but more interesting. So yeah. Alright, Barack Obama. Low A tier. He had a lot of important social policies that were necessary. In fact, I'd kind of consider him a second Woodrow Wilson in a way, because he was a very important reformer. He also got us out of the recession of 2008. So yeah, solid president. Wish he could have served a third term. I'm about to get demonetized. But yeah, that's kind of expected. I mean, this guy's a failure. I don't even know what else to say that hasn't already been said. Terrible policy, terrible character, terrible everything. The political movement that he spawned is tearing apart U.S. society. A lot of his policy decisions are still negatively impacting us. Yeah. I'm too tired for this, honestly. All right, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Next to Paul. I mean, he's basically kind of just a less enthusiastic version of Obama. He's been doing progress despite the many obstacles in such a polarized society. I mean, he's had a few hiccups, but he's by no means a bad president. He's just a solid, decent president. Like I said, if you're in B tier, you're doing something right. So I think this is it. I think we're done here. Hold on, no, that's not how you do it. I'm stupid. This is the complete tier list for my ranking of the U.S. presidents. And I would just like to say, keep in mind, this is my political position. Yours may vary. So, take this with a grain of salt. Maybe I'll come back and do a revision of this once I learn more about history, because the presidents are some of the most interesting people in the history of the United States, and I really would like to get to know more about them. So, thank you for letting me share this with you. And see you all next time.